This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we are at 4 o'clock. So I will call the continuation. Is Tony dialing in?
Tony will be online, yeah.
Okay, so I'll just call to order the continuation of the last board meeting, which was on the
3rd of February.
on the 3rd of February. Do we need to open up with Pledge of Allegiance or?
I think we're continuing, right?
We're just
No,
continuing.
it's just
Okay, great.
continue.
That's what I thought. Okay, so let's just go into agenda items. Laura, we're going to start with.
We have, well, there is a comment actually, because
Okay.
number 2 is actually public comment. Rod Senior has a comment on the DM employment process. You know the rule, 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, board. And I'm pleased that you're having this continuation meeting because the principals of Premier District Management are here. They weren't here last week at the meeting. I'm glad that you're here, Cal. I just want to review, I've been zooming into these meetings the last few times because I haven't been here in person for other reasons. Here are the facts, the way I see them at least, is that Chris Shoemaker left us last fall after the ink was hardly dry on a 3-year contract, which surprised me. I know that you went through a lot of effort to construct a contract for Chris, but we had lunch together, and then some of the things he told me, it wasn't totally surprising to me that he left. Further to that, Premier District Management was hired under a 6-month contract to provide interim district management services. And I think I'm right in saying that contract started October 1.
October 25th.
25th and expires 31 or 31st
April
of March.
29th.
It ends at the end. Thank you. Okay. Now, at last week's meeting, I observed some board discussion about making potential changes to the interim district management position. This is during PDM's tenure. And if that was the case, that would seem to me to have some ramifications on the existing contract that PDM has with the district, certainly in the issues of liability and accountability. If PDM was no longer the interim district manager, but was still involved with the district. And in my mind, as a business guy, that contract would need to be revised or terminated. I want to just touch on the district management search process that I've watched. And I think it's become unnecessarily complicated. I've seen Doug and Tony Pyers doing a dance around the sunshine laws interminably, and I understand it. I know Tony is very sensitive to all this stuff, as he should be. I've seen, discussions whether the staff are going to get involved in these interviews, or Doug himself, or then single board members and then entire boards. And it's like, it just seems to me to be going around in a circle, and it could be simpler. I'm not in the business of pointing fingers. I prefer to try and help resolve this pretty convoluted situation the way I see it. I think we've lost a lot of time, and certainly we've lost one of the best candidates, Larry Tibbs, whose resume I saw, and he wasn't followed upon, and we lost him, and that's a shame. I think that the board ought to consider doing what it should have done a long time ago, is to stop micromanaging this hiring process and delegate it to Premier District Management during its period that it's here till the end of April. Agree a process and a fee and a date certain for the PDM to go and get the candidates, screen them, bring them to the board, and shortcut the entire online process and bring them in here, sit them in the corridor, bring them in for 30 minutes at a time, and let the board interview them, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. It doesn't then violate the sunshine laws at all. I think that's easy, and that's the way it should be done. I think that if we don't take care on this, we're going to be still going on with this convoluted search process that doesn't seem to have resulted in much up to now, at least. And we could be losing Premier District Management and one of its key resources who's sitting behind me, Scott Connell, who's providing really good services for us. And if he leaves with PDM and we haven't hired a district manager in time, we could be in a difficult spot, the way I see it. And of course, the district manager needs to be hired before the public works manager needs to be hired, because he needs to be involved in that hiring. That's it. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
Conference will now be recorded.
That was weird.
Okay. So we'll go to the first item on the agenda. So this is,
Nobody online.
yeah, there's no one else.
No comments online, and no one else signed up to make a comment.
Uh,
Any emails or faxes or texts
No.
for comments? Okay.
Anyway,
So it's a continuation
Yeah.
for Bill also, okay.
so let's go into 3A. L, you're addressing that?
Good afternoon, El Harris, Gateway Services Stormwater. I placed at your chairs today a copy of the plat of the property showing the extent of the encroachment that they are requesting with their 5-foot vinyl fence. It will be 5 feet off of it's 15 feet into the easement, 5 feet off the back chain link fence. This fence is no more it's going to be no more of a problem than any of the other 8 existing fences that are already out there.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs.
It's going to be a vinyl fence set back in essentially 5 feet, well, 15 feet from the front, and essentially paralleling the chain link fence along the CME.
Correct.
I think they provided what we asked for.
Yep.
They have done that. We have their signed agreement right here for the chairman after the meeting today.
Make a motion to approve.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
And L, this will be the precedent moving forward.
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
That has been basically a precedent for easement encroachment requests. They have to give us a plat showing us line drawings, the extent of the encroachment into the easement.
And just to follow up, what we had requested is any existing fencing that's up, we were going to just notify those homeowners that in the event, because they have operated outside of approval, that any access, any work that needs to be done in the future, it is the resident's responsibility to either remove, replace, or repair any.
Certainly reconstruct.
Any due to any needed access by the district, because they're operating outside of.
Yeah, that would be a contingency on it for sure.
And that is to all property, all owners on that particular
have an
street that
existing
have
fence
an
up.
existing fence.
Yeah.
Send them all the same letter.
That's correct.
And Al, this is Tony, and Mr. Chairman, if you could, Al, if you could generate that list with the legal descriptions and the folio numbers, and I will I'll take the first stab at the letter. I have forms from the past when we sort of ran into this before, and then you and I can work on it and then get the letters ready to go out.
Very good. I will do that, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
And that'll be generated on a physical walk that says lots numbers 1 through 5, 7, 9 all have
And I will also refer to the plat.
okay, sounds
Perfect.
good.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Who is that? Is that the only?
Yeah, that's-
Green.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
sorry. Sorry,
you.
we're at the doctor. Thank you.
Drawing.
Okay, moving on to 3B, district manager employment process. So Cal and I spoke last week. I think the purpose, really, Cal, to bring you in is for you to maybe give us your opinion of, yes, sir, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Is to just give us your opinion of kind of where we're at with Gary's departure, how will that impact our agreement? And probably more importantly, is helping us address this vacancy in the district manager. You know, what you think your responsibilities are today, and what might be your recommendation, if any, moving forward to help us
Sure.
really try to move that process along.
Well, and you had laid out an idea of maybe 10 hours a week, keeping Scott on the contract. The contract still states interim district manager. And 10 hours a week, I just don't see that as
Well,
being.
let's take that off the,
Okay.
so let's table that conversation. And I
Okay.
think really what we need to address, if at Gary's departure, how would you fill that district manager void that's there, that will be there starting, what, next week?
Sure. Well, if we restructure the agreement we have, we could handle, and I just put together some deals. And I listened to the meeting the last meeting you had last week. And one of the concerns I have is, and this isn't a negative comment about anyone, but I just don't think an employee should be involved in the selection of their boss. So that's just a personal philosophy I've had my entire life. But what we would help you do if, you know, we were able to come to an agreement is first, we would continue the process that Gary started. We'll receive the resumes. We kind of do a look, an evaluation of them, we being PDM, and then we'd separate them into qualified, unqualified piles. And that's the way they're on the line online now. And then we would vet those that are qualified and, you know, keeping the board fully, that vetting process would be available for the board to look
Can you
at
just
anytime.
define vetting process?
Vetting is check their references, make sure that what they've put in their resume is accurate, that they did graduate from whatever school they graduated from. So we do that background check.
So you wouldn't have any conversations with qualified candidates before you recommended them to the board?
Well, that we would, but at that point, now we've got a pile of qualified candidates. And then we would go through those and select what we feel are the 6 most qualified. And then we present them to the board. Now, what I've put in this is to have them interview online with the board at a publicly advertised meeting. We're not going to say rank them 1 through 6. We're going to give you 6
Sure.
that are all equally qualified. And then you'll make a determination. They could be interviewed online, saving the expense of travel expense for them. And then the board would vote at a public meeting and identify 3 candidates that they would like to consider further. Now, the other idea I had is that instead of having the 6, and we could do all of those that are qualified, is we would conduct an interview online, record it, and provide it for the board to be able to look at. And with the resume, now you're seeing a face, you're getting a feel for their personality, you know, and you can draw your own conclusions. We'd recommend a certain number that would come to the board and be interviewed. And I think once you've zeroed in on 3 candidates, we could, you know, get them before you pretty quickly.
And let me just ask you, what has kind of prohibited you guys from kind of doing that to this point? Because I think all we've been seeing so far is
Honestly,
just a review of candidates and, hey, here's
but bluntly, we sent them all to you, and you were supposed to, you know, proceed from there. That's the direction the board gave, was that, and is when I was here, you were going to be the first person.
And then we have had to augment that because of the process. But
Right.
I understand. I'm just
Okay.
trying to understand exactly
Yeah.
where, you know, if there's a bottleneck, where did it happen? And is this process something that, as far as you guys doing the interviews and vetting those out and presenting X number, top 5,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
That's something that that you would be taking on?
Gary would work with me on it.
Okay, so you would retain Gary.
Yes.
The only thing I see that could happen, and from what I'm read on some of these resumes, it might very well happen,
Mhm.
is we don't have anybody that's going to get down to the group of 3. That's what concerns me. In which case, this is going to be more or less a continuation. We might have to go back and re-advertise more, extend the period in which we're doing it. If we
Mhm.
weren't able to take, let's say, 6 and get it to 3 or even to 2,
Mhm.
if they just simply fail to pass the test here, that we can't get a consensus of 3 people to agree with
Yeah.
anybody.
Well, we would have,
We'd have to go back.
we would receive resumes throughout this process.
Yeah.
We're not saying just the resumes you have now.
That's not a draw line in the
Yeah,
sand. deal.
right.
Yeah.
And, if we get somebody that's really strong, and even though we're in the process of the 6, well,
Fire 'em in.
that 6 became 7 now.
I agree.
Okay?
I
It's,
agree to that.
no, we need to leave that door open.
Oh, you have to.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the problem is right now, we're just reliant on who's applying.
I'm sorry.
We're relying on who is applying.
Yeah, and then the last update is on January 26th, right? That's the last time that we enter anybody.
And so I talked to 2 individuals, and in order to proceed, we had to confirm the process. Because the next step would be, at least the way I was understanding it, would be to get them in front of staff. But then Tony said, we had to look at that process, so we had to basically put things on hold till we confirm the process, which has caused a delay. And I think, having more validation and qualifying on the front end as quickly as possible is probably the first step. Because we need to get down to a manageable 3 or 4 as quickly as possible.
Get it down to a number that we can take and interview, to get it down to another number that then you might want to take it to staff. But I'm not even convinced that that is a necessary step.
Well, and 2, and we've reached out to a couple different agencies to do this with no luck. We had a specialist that in this area, they said they had no capacity to take this work on. There's been another firm that said they could potentially do it, but they had no expertise in this area, which, with talking with Tony, that puts us at risk if they don't know how to operate within a government environment, because there's risk there. So there is no agency available that we had seen through the previous months who could do this. So that's why we keep coming back to you, Kyle, and Premier, is how can you help us, push this along, whether it's managing what comes in, and even, Flavia has a list of how many? 200?
There was like 225 districts.
200
So I
districts
would
that we
say
could
at least-
potentially just
at
call a
least
network
80.
Mhm.
that, that we could use somebody doing that.
Yeah.
I would have loved for Gary to, make some of those outreach and calls, but I don't think
Mhm.
anything has been done there.
Yeah.
Is there a way that if we would adopt this process, that we could initiate it at the next meeting
Sure.
and have the first 6 come in to where we can start narrowing that down to 3? Because anyway I see it, you're not going to have this done by March 1st. It's going to be tough. Be very
Maybe by
tough.
March 1st, but I think
March
we'd have
3rd, yeah,
it done
March
by
3rd.
the end of March.
Maybe, yeah, into March, but March 3rd. Okay, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we can land on at least the district manager search, and Premier taking a larger role in that selection process,
Mhm.
and that's one piece. The other piece is with Gary's vacancy, what are we doing about the district manager responsibility?
Well, I think when we set the agreement up, and as Tony or maybe Ed said, or maybe Rod said, that it had a sunshine date, but that was not to exceed. It hasn't, I thought we were to manage the district, and that hasn't occurred. It's, basically Laura's run the district, and, Gary is bypassed regularly, and, I would prefer that we just terminate the agreement. But if we want to restructure it, and it's not a interim management situation, and it's more of a consulting situation, then yes.
Yeah.
But, for me to put my company in a liable position for decisions that are made, we need control of that.
Comment?
Well, I totally understand. That's why I brought that up at the last meeting. It's exactly what I would do. If we don't have somebody or you don't have somebody to put in to do that, and again, we're talking about 45 days, 60 days, something like that. You're not going to go out and get somebody to do that. They don't know more, even get to find out where the restrooms are, and time's going to be up.
Yeah, Gary was set up to fail into that situation. He really was.
Yeah.
And that was our fault.
So it's more of a, what would you call it? An association that you would have, or a consulting agreement then that it would convert to?
Mhm.
To me, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah.
The only issue we've got is that if we have issues that become, let's say, critical, that we could come to you on the association or on the consulting basis to get input.
And so what do you think so I had thrown out like 10 hours, but do you think it's more 20 hours, including the district manager stuff?
Yeah,
Does that
to
seem
do
reasonable?
the search, and we would also be looking at, getting some good candidates for the public works position, capital projects manager, however you look at that position. So we'd look at both of those and try and fill those positions.
Yeah.
But most of our emphasis would be on the district manager right
Because I
now.
honestly believe that I think where we thought we were with Chris leaving and where we actually were, I think we were a lot better off than what we thought, personally.
Well-
Chris left a good legacy. Chris was really a good manager.
He did a good job of setting the organization up. He did. I also.
Well, we
like
got a
the-
good staff.
Well, that's
around.
true. We filled it well.
And the other one is that Scott's filled a void
Absolutely.
that Chris had, and
That was where the gap was.
That was the
I have
big
to
gap.
agree with that.
That was
I
where the
think,
gap
I
was.
think,
And
We
again,
were very
we
lucky he
would've-
was available.
I mean,
yeah, I think we're really lucky to have Scott. I have to agree with that.
But the comment that you started out with of having staffing interviewing your boss, I totally agree with that. That's not appropriate.
Mhm.
At least it never was in my 40 years.
It's really awkward and for me
It
as
is for
well.
everybody. It's
Yeah.
right. It's just not a good situation. So.
So the only other question that I have is, I'm confused on how, and I don't know if it came from you or maybe this was how, but Laura. So you're telling me that all the candidates that we see here on the share folder haven't been vetted, and what I mean by vetted, meaning we haven't checked their backgrounds and we haven't checked their.
No, we have.
We have, so every.
Yeah. Gary's got a sheet. I don't know if he shared it with anyone.
Well, that's what I'm
other
thinking,
than-
is right
Go ahead.
now.
We had it at the last meeting.
Did
Or he
ya?
sent it
Okay.
out before the last meeting, or
Yeah.
Laura or somebody sent it out.
But he
Yeah.
didn't check all of them. He only,
Just
I
the
thought they were all
qualified
checked, and they
ones.
he had narrowed them down to non-qualified,
mhm.
those that had dropped out, i.e. Tibbs. There were 2 that dropped out that had an X.
Yeah, Tibbs and Laura.
Oh, that's right. And Laura's the other one. But there were 2 that dropped out. There were several non-qualified,
they
and then
forget.
there were
It's 'cause I'm
the
still here.
remainers.
Mhm.
And what you're saying is everybody that's on that list has been vetted to this point.
That were placed in the qualified file.
And then
yes.
what we would do moving forward is that list would go back and be revisited, and you would have conversations and
And
that
qualify.
list needs to be on the shared folder. That's what I'm saying. So we are not looking at new candidates prior to and old candidates prior, you know what I'm saying? I think
So
it should be.
Are you asking for me to set up a vetted folder? I can do that.
And I think
That's
that
what
would
we
be
had
helpful,
one,
because if
No.
you're vetting,
No?
no, because if you're already telling me that somebody's no qualified, I honestly, I don't even want to look at it, because if
Waste
it
of
was,
time.
yeah, so, and
That's
that's not how it is here. So like literally over the weekend, I went through, and I know we went through every single one, and if I knew without having Gary's piece of paper, I wanted one document that, so if you can just have on the share folder, non-qualified, I'm not even gonna open.
Yeah.
Qualified, then I open that, you know what I mean? And that's not how it's set up.
I can add
Yeah.
that document that
Okay.
he sent to you to that folder.
I know there was a possibility of maybe 1 or 2 on the list that I looked at that probably wouldn't make it to the DM, but they very easily could fall into the public works.
Sure.
I have that, I don't know.
And
who-
and we've talked about that being acceptable. Like
Yeah,
now it would be probably Kyle or someone from staffs, letting
Right.
someone know that there is another
But
position available if they were interested in.
But the
interviewing
point
for
is,
that.
we take them down and let that process send them that away instead of a no, because
Yeah,
I don't wanna- I don't wanna lose them.
We should have two folders. One is vetted for district manager, one is vetted for public works. And you could have the same candidate in both
Both.
folders. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's a chance of that.
There's a chance of that. And I think that's, as you're having conversations with your experience and, you know.
Yeah, and you talked to one
I
of the
talked to one,
candidates,
yeah.
Rick Whalen, I think his name was.
Which would be
And I had
viable.
approached him
Yeah,
That would
for
be
that.
one I
Would
saw
he
that
be
they were
interested
Yeah.
in the
And
public
that's where
works?
the
I
next-
guess we're all really on the same page.
Yeah.
And regarding Tibbs, he reached out to us telling that he got another job and he was no longer interested in this position. How did that conversation came about? Tibbs.
I don't know if he contacted Gary or what. I
So
just
how do we
received
know that he's still not interested? Because that doesn't mean if you got a
No,
job
I-
somewhere else, that it has happened. I mean, I
Sure.
work in the professional world and
Yeah.
I had,
Well, I would reach
I had
out
very
and
good manager that, I hired and 2 weeks later, they really wanted it
Mhm.
and bigger wanted, they got it, they moved. So
Well,
Yeah.
Grass would.
if
grow
I
on the
didn't-
other
yeah,
side.
my
Well,
thing is,
I would reach out and
if
just, you know,
Larry
just
didn't
confirm.
say that he doesn't want it, then I agree. But
Well,
if
it's two
Larry didn't
things.
say
Have
it,
you had a
then I think we should
conversation, make this easy, have you had a conversation that Tibbs is gone?
No.
No, see, that's what I'm saying. It's,
So I think we need to confirm the availability. And two, if he is, who do you know?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
include
Those guys are
Tibbs
just
to follow up to make sure that, but yeah, just tell me how many, if we come to an agreement, just tell me how many you'd like to interview and we'll get you the top candidates. And what I'd like to do, I'd mentioned an online interview to the whole board, but we being
Bypass
staff,
that.
we
You
could
would do
do
You do
that
that.
and
So-
you just
If-
make it available. We
The
could
way the
board it, you
process
could
should
see it.
move forward is Premier will be responsible for initial review and qualifying. That qualifying, you can call it vetting, whatever you want, but that's actual outreach, conversation, because that's where you're going to find out where the
Mhm.
rubber hits the road. You can do reference checks all day long. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You can check work, that just means is someone truthful on their resume, whatever. So if you're doing the initial review and qualifying, the next step would be to present those qualified candidates that Premier recommends to the board. We would interview them. And then I think the last step, or it could be before that, probably after this, is the candidates that we vet. Let's say there's 3 that we whittle down, or maybe it's 2. I think it is important for those folks to have conversations with staff leadership. So with Kenny, with Laura, if nothing else, just so they get an understanding of the district.
That's why I said earlier, at that point, if you're going to do it, that would be the time to do it, not sooner.
Yeah.
Not sooner.
And we might even have a preference at that point. I just want someone
Well, I
to make
think-
sure staff needs to have
I think
some
that
line of sight.
I'm assuming that the method is when we interview 6, it's just going to be a heads up, winner take all vote of who drops into the next category.
Yeah, the way I would probably see it is Premier does first review qualifying. It goes to the board interviews. Next step is staff. I don't know if you call it.
meet and greet or whatever.
Staff
Not
meet and
any,
greet,
yeah,
staff
it's a-
meet and
yeah.
greet, and then final decision.
Yeah,
Would
that
be the
goes
board.
back to the board
Come back to
for
the
a-
board.
for a final
Yeah,
interview with the 2 or 3
Yeah.
remaining.
Yeah. That's the way I would do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty close to what, Tony, the kind of the process that we had laid out.
To my
However-
knowledge, as long as staff does not do anything in the way of ranking, just recommendations, we're safe on sunshine.
And really from staff's perspective, it's just, getting to know someone's background, getting comfortable with their experience.
Well, you're talking about
learning
maybe,
more about the district.
you're talking about maybe 3 people.
You're talking about 3 people.
3 people.
Maybe even 2.
Yeah.
Because I would like to almost insert Scott in there somewhere as well, as from a consultant perspective, because he's going to represent the
Well, do we
Right.
need
So
a,
are
Scott
we
will
ready to
be
give direction
interviewing
to-
with us.
On the
Scott-
front end?
On the front end, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
He'll be able
So-
to
and that's
answer
even-
questions.
that's
What are
even
the
better, 'cause then
projects?
we've
What are
got-
the, yeah.
Okay. So really, you're talking about probably 2.
I think what we're ready for is to make a motion to authorize Cal to submit to us as quick as possible a consulting agreement, which will essentially take out the current district management agreement and provide for the processes we just talked about.
So if the revision is to revise Premier's contract
Mhm.
to provide, Scott's position
Mhm.
as previously defined, a revision of removal of the district manager and inserting the 20 hours of
Sure.
management consultant.
Mhm.
Are we talking weekly or monthly?
I would say that's weekly, right? I mean, you
Oh,
probably, I mean,
That's probably plenty. Instead of hours, I'd rather put it as a flat amount.
okay, well, however, I'll
Yeah.
leave that to you.
Okay.
However you think is, and then we would maintain the existing duration. And I would put in there with the ability to extend,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just to make it
Yeah.
easier for us to extend. If
Are
get-
we continuing to get applications? Are we
I
getting
have
them?
not seen any new
That was my
ones.
question, because the last time.
It's
there
because
was
if there
updated
are
to
any, though, I
26.
haven't seen
It's
any
gonna be
for a
tough.
couple weeks.
That position's gonna be tough to get
Yeah.
applicants for because.
Now, I did send over, when I got back from vacation, Saturday or Sunday, I sent to Gary, there's 4 or 5 there, and
Okay.
1 or 2 was pretty good.
Well, I'd say we need to go back and just relook at the strategy on where
And
we're,
yeah.
you know, who we're,
And
where
have
we're
Laura,
posting this, how
yeah.
we're socializing.
and have Laura in the meantime, get those out on the,
Sure, folder.
Yeah, I already created a vetted for district manager, vetted for public works manager, and there's already a declined
Yeah.
folder, but I'll have to find that email from Gary with that sheet and then I'll
Yeah.
move them accordingly.
But I think part of this, Cal, too, is really, you know, and I think Garrett would probably be good at this, like, just, you have to call a network. We're gonna have to call district
We've
managers.
got to take the
and
resources that
Take
are
that
available.
list that
what
Flavia
Flavia's
found
got.
and literally just call a network. Hey, I'm calling on behalf of Gateway Service District. We have an opening. I see you're in that role. Is there someone that you might know of that might be interested? And they're gonna say, well, I might be interested.
It it doesn't have to be any more than that. That's exactly
I
right.
thought somebody at a meeting earlier, months ago, was somewhat prohibitive of that's doing something
Coaching.
No, as long as,
illegal.
yeah, as long as
No.
you're not soliciting,
Soliciting, like, hey,
direct-
I need you to come here.
are you
for
interested in
me.
this role? You,
We're just letting
that's-
them know that we have an open position. If
That's
but you
right.
can network.
So
Yeah.
you're only advertising, you're not selling.
Right.
Yes.
We're just saying, hey, we have this opening.
a-
If you know anybody.
it's
kind of
network.
Yeah, exactly.
All you're doing is network.
If they
Your
come back
brother-in-law
next
might be
day,
sitting at
if
home
they
waiting.
come back the next day with a resume, you know.
Yeah, and I've done a little of that now
Bit of
with some
ice right
engineers that
there.
I know, if they'd be interested in the public works position. One engineer who I think would be a great district manager, but he happens to be a principal with Old Montez, and I didn't realize that, but he said, you know, no. We couldn't afford them. So, but we always look for that opportunity,
Yeah.
and it's
And I would
always
say
at
we
the-
would look to you to, you know, like, we
Yeah.
need to accelerate this
We'll get you the
process.
best
know, I think
candidates
we're
we
behind a
can.
little bit, so whatever
Yeah.
you can do, any creative ideas that you
We've
may
been
have.
running catch up for quite a while now.
Yeah.
So do
Okay.
we want to give direction at all on the candidates that we currently have?
I'd say
maybe
start
two
with
or
that
three?
list.
Yeah,
Whoever's in
send
that
me an
list.
email.
Well, here's.
on
let's make
ones
it
that you
Why don't,
prefer.
why
No,
don't
but
we
I
just
thought
all
just
send to
stay in-
Cal our
yeah,
own independent
separate, yeah.
comments of those for
Mhm.
his
Why don't
consideration?
we do it the
I mean,
right way, which
I
is
don't have a
like,
problem just saying now and
One
seeing
sec.
if you guys agree and then go.
yeah,
Just give
one
it to you.
second. I think what we should probably do is anyone that's in that list, now reach out, have a
Sure.
conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right now, if it's 6 and if you got
Mhm.
3 or 4 more that come in, you do your initial vetting. If you think they're minimally qualified, then you set up a conversation and call them. So by the next board meeting, we should have, you know, at least input on up to 6, 7, maybe 8
Sure.
candidates. And maybe if there's 2 or 3 out of there, then we
Well, if
start the
if
process.
those other 4 or 5 that Gary supposedly's got, then that's going to possibly increase that list to maybe 8 or 9
Yeah.
that we have to take down.
The question's gonna be, and I think the right thing to do would to have your district manager in place and then hire your public works position.
If we
However,
can.
we've seen the way the market is, you know, these candidates aren't sitting around. So I think if you go through and you do identify someone like the gentleman that I talked to, I think we need to start setting them up with Kenny and Laura and having those interviews.
Sure.
I mean, it would be ideal to have the district manager first, but the way the market is right now, you hire based on the best available talent. That's when you get them. So I wouldn't want to delay that, at least starting that process and finding someone.
So we can, as board members, contact other districts
Sure.
and advertise.
Yeah, you just don't represent that you are representing the board. It's you as an individual are doing that, and it's not the board that's authorized this. I mean, the board
Because
obviously
there's not what I
supports it,
call
but-
a plethora of communities, CDDs like ours, that have utilities.
Well, right, and
That
of that
really separates the
225,
field.
probably 90% of them are managed by a company like ours.
I mean, what you're looking for is, and I did research on this, you're looking for, I mean, again, a district manager that's from a CDD or assistant district manager or possibly a city planner in a small city or a city manager, assistant city manager, maybe a city planner. I mean, there's only about 5 or 6 potential titles that could even fall within this. And you might have a utility manager that, like Chris, in Chris's case, a utility manager that does have other government experience that could fall into it, but it's a very narrow area that we're looking for here.
Yes.
And that's even without looking at major relocation. And that's a whole nother ball of wax, trying to advertise outside the state of Florida, which could be some viable candidates, but it's very difficult to identify those individuals as well.
Was one in Washington State,
Yeah, the Korean guy.
Kim.
Yes.
Yeah, he was pretty impressive.
Which means, but also we haven't even talked about, we might hire someone from out of state, but they're going to want relocation.
Right.
And you're talking about $20,000, $30,000.
Oh, you ain't gonna do it for that.
Yeah, I'm saying at a minimum. That's,
Yeah. That might cover living expenses.
Yeah. That might pay his moving the
Right.
truck.
that's what I'm saying. At a minimum, you pay
Yeah.
living.
It's big bucks.
Tony, you're muted.
I moved 9 times.
Tony,
Okay.
you muted.
Tony, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Oh, that's great.
He still is.
somebody else.
Hey, can you
Yeah.
unmute
Can't
him?
hear, I can
It
try.
looks like he's talking.
He's not, I didn't
think he
mute
was
him.
talking to
Look, I
somebody
knew it
else.
was that easy.
Rod, you had something?
Maybe he can't hear us either.
He ought to come virtually more often.
Yeah.
I'll shoot him a text. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there
Now
you go.
Go
Now
ahead
we
now.
can hear you.
Now you can hear me?
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Okay. I've been trying, I had the mic on. Just a couple of clarifying items. One is my memos that we talked about in the outline that I provided was all applications will go with, the initial concept was the board would look at the list and say, interview these people. And then the recommendations would come to the board. And the board would make a decision as to each of the candidates. What you're doing now, again, is you're having the manager reject applications, and that's inappropriate. The board is the only, they're making the fact finding, the culling decision, and that's what I'm concerned about. So if Cal is in
Why
his
is that
team,
inappropriate? Headhunters do that all the time.
Well,
they're not, but Cal, you're a public official in your role as district manager.
Well, he won't be, Tony. We're changing that over. He's going to
He'll
be
be a
a consultant.
Well,
He
but
won't-
here's the problem. Well, here's the problem. The statute requires that you have a district manager.
well, we'll address that. So we have to,
No, you have to have one now. You can't just not have a district manager.
what we have to determine is, would we want to adopt Laura as the interim district manager if we're changing Cal's contract? And that gives us exactly what we need.
Until next week when he comes up with some.
So you're ready to hire somebody,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
until we're ready to hire someone. I mean, I don't see any problem with that.
I don't either.
Well, he gets his associate's deal and that terminates the PDM district management
Yeah,
responsibilities.
we would have to address that anyway because.
There'd be a,
district manager.
yeah.
So Tony, we'll have the concept now, and we need to vote on to approve it, but it would be Premier would act in a consulting capacity, which would include, management consultant, and Scott's role would still stay as is. We would look to appoint Laura as the interim district manager. So we have our interim district manager. Kyle's Premier would then be part of the upfront vetting process and qualifying of candidates that would be recommended to the board. The board would, I guess, proceed with those recommendations.
Interview and-
through an interview.
Interview and reduce it down to a.
And so basically what I'm hearing then is that the current district management agreement gets terminated.
Yes.
There is a new professional services agreement entered into between the district and Premier for Scott to do certain tasks, for Cal to do certain tasks. And at the same time, the board would appoint Laura as interim district manager.
You got it.
Correct.
That's it.
Okay, so we won't have that ready until next Thursday at the board meeting, but that's the concept, so I understand it, correct?
Tony,
Now-
would the board approve a contract in principle, refer it to you to negotiate and put something
Yeah.
where the chair,
We could do that.
No, I don't want, no, I'm not going there, not on this issue. No. I want the whole board to see the entire agreement as to what the scope of services are between Premier and the district as to recruitment and hiring of, and recommendations for a manager, and what Scott Connell's role is going to be vis-a-vis the district. I think
How long do you think it take you to draw that up?
I will have that for next board meeting, which is next week.
yeah, but I would want to review it also.
Why
Oh, yeah,
would
of course. Well, no, Cal, the idea is I would draft it, send it to you initially, because we'll go back and forth on it. Then we'll have it to the board, and the board can,
Cal sends to you, Tony, the back basis of it, you draft it, send it back to Cal for review and approval prior to next Thursday.
yes, sir. I mean, that's the idea. I can,
That, Cal?
And I think, Cal, what you're looking for is we can make a motion today
Mhm.
to advise council to work with Premier on the revision of the contract, which would include terminating existing and modifying it. We can approve that. That way you've got an approval on the books. It's that we're changing scope,
Mhm.
and that'll be in process, and we'll have it in the
Right.
next board. Is
Yeah.
that what more?
well, I know, but it's not just changing scope, Doug. I think we need to terminate the existing agreement because it's called an interim district management services agreement for
Yes.
district manager. So
New agreement.
in principle, at the same time that gets terminated, the new agreement goes into effect, which will be next Thursday. And at the same time, the board would appoint Laura as interim district manager.
Yes.
Okay, and Cal and I can work on the language for the, I'll call it the professional services that would be provided by Premier that are different in scope.
Yes.
And then the question that I have, Tony, just because you're going to need to draft, you'll need to revise the process. So again, just so we're all clear, but Premier will do the initial reviewing and qualification of applicants for the district manager position. Premier will present those recommended candidates to the board for the next step, which would be board interview. Now, we need to define what board interview is. Now, does that mean come to a board meeting? Is that an online? I think you had said that we either do it individually or we do it as a board. So what is your recommendation? Do we bring them into a board meeting? We do it under the sun?
Well, it's up to you, I guess. Cal, what do you recommend? I mean, it's whatever you all feel most comfortable, most productive from the standpoint of candor and or public transparency.
Computer.
Virtual,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's going to have to be
I
virtual.
think whether it's virtual or on site, it's still the question
All
is
five of us.
it in
Yeah.
a board meeting with all five of us
Yes.
asking questions?
It's got to
Okay.
be.
Yeah.
And that could that be part of we could just do like a workshop,
Yeah.
or at least a section of the meeting. We'd have 30 minutes per candidate,
Mhm.
which is
Just
not a
keep-
whole lot of time to
just-
vet out
just-
district manager, let me tell you.
That's exactly right. And you're talking about, if you have 6 or 8 of them, you're talking about 3-4 hour meeting. Minimum.
Yeah, it cannot be a workshop because you can't take action in a workshop. So like you said, Doug, part of a meeting.
Workshop, I meant just a section of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
board.
But I totally agree. You cannot do this
Well, we
less
have to
than
have a
30
special-
minutes. No way.
But what's your thoughts about having an online interview that we would conduct with the questions that you feel are important, but they'd all answer the same questions? We'd have a recording and each of you could look at that individually.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine.
I'm fine with it, but I do
yeah.
think that it's going to be important
That
for
saved a lot of
each of
time.
us to be able to,
React.
well, to be able to interact with,
Yeah.
because we're all going to have different points of questioning. So what I'm trying to figure out is, we do that in a board setting, or do we do individual interviews and then you make a decision in the board?
Or have Cal lead off each and every one with the select number of questions, then reserve time that each one of us could ask their 1 or 2 questions.
Additional, yeah, if
Okay.
needed.
So you have,
If
which
needed.
is good, because you really want to have your interviews.
You want
repeatable.
consistency.
You want
Yes.
consistency. So you can
I
have
like
maybe
that idea.
maybe 3 questions that you would ask.
Mhm.
We'll submit our questions, and maybe that's 3 or
You,
4,
you,
5.
yeah, you pick out probably of our 5 board members giving you the questions. You pick out the ones you feel would be select. Then we always have the opportunity, if our question wasn't in one of the
So
met
we're
the
gonna
deal,
address
we
that
can
in
ask
the-
that in
okay.
our.
I do
Live.
like that idea, because I want to
Like
make sure
online.
that we ask
Okay.
our questions.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Well, he may say something that will trigger something else that we don't even know about.
so if you'll, again, when you do your interview, if you'll
Mhm.
record it,
Mhm.
you'll follow the interview guide.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be, part of those questions will be
Right.
questions that you pull from our input, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll ask those same questions all the time.
Okay.
And then when you recommend them to the board, they will come into the board.
Yeah.
And then it will give an opportunity for us each to ask maybe, 5 minutes each, some, direct interaction or ask questions. Because we need to keep it to a time frame.
Yeah, but to instant comment that it could be a 4 or 5 hour meeting. I thought we were going to try and get it down to the 3 or so.
Yeah, that's what,
Well,
ideally.
we
we're
did 30
but we're gonna be
minutes.
doing 6 or 8. So we do 6 or 8, it takes 30 minutes to get to 3.
Oh, you're talking about the first block.
Yeah, the first one.
Well, we may have to split that up and add an additional meeting in between, but I would imagine if you were to look at 6 people,
You tell us
I'd
what we
say I'd
need.
start with my
Yeah.
top 3 or 4,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
You know what-
we'll-
you know
we
what you-
can recommend 3 for you, and if you want to throw another 1 or 2 in there, that's fine.
Okay.
But I think any more than 3 or 4 is unruly. It's just
I agree.
makes it long, and they all start, blending
Unless you
together.
get
and-
Can't remember.
That many really, really good ones. I don't think that's gonna be a
I think we're
problem.
gonna have at least 3.
But I would say too, we probably need to be prepared for probably the month of March, having our 2 board meetings, and then at least having
1 or 2 meetings.
we almost need on that Thursday. We need a meeting a week in order to get them in.
When, March?
Book it.
Yeah.
Probably not a bad
Okay.
idea.
And keep in mind, into March, this man's not here anymore. I talked to him again today. March
thought it was-
30th, he's done.
You got to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Cal, that man ain't getting out of the room
I thought
yet.
it was April 29th.
I thought it was April. I thought he was at the end of
April 1. Yeah, it's
No,
not
I-
the,
I actually
I
thought.
just
yeah,
wrote it
the
down, April
contract said
29th.
April 1 or
June.
April 9th. Yeah.
Well, didn't you say start, you said
The
October
con-
1st
uh,
and you
the
said October
agreement-
25th.
It's just like it runs through
Well, I mean,
September
Scott's gonna
29th, but
dictate how
it's-
long it's gonna work.
we're
It
revising
doesn't
it
matter what,
anyway. So, I
we
mean,
agree on that.
if you're
So,
revising it.
Rod, I know you've had a comment. You want to just step up real quick?
Yeah,
So,
Thank you. I realize you've got a motion. I don't mean to interfere, but I want to come here because I know Tony's online. Tony, a couple of meetings ago, he expressed a concern about individual board members interfering by going to other districts and poaching staff. Does that concern apply to Premier doing the same thing?
well, we've already addressed that. So,
What's Tony, could you ask Tony just to clarify that?
Tony said he couldn't do it if he was under the guise of being the acting district manager.
Uh-huh.
But when we told him he went to a consulting agreement, it was free.
But I thought
Oh,
I just,
no, the concept is whether you are interfering with an advantageous business relationship, whether it's a private individual or a governmental body. So to the extent that Cal could do what the board had talked about, just a general blast out to all districts, hey, the Gateway is looking for, or however we phrased it before, I can't recall exactly. There's an opening there. It's just letting the whole world know, as opposed to actively soliciting them.
so there's no problem even with individual board members reaching out to other special
not
districts, Tony?
I didn't understand, I understood that the concept was not for that to happen, but there's that list of districts. And the concept was, if I recall, that there would be sort of a notification to all districts that Gateway was looking for a district manager. And that was it.
I think that's safer instead of, I don't think I'm sorry, but I don't have time to go through that list again and start calling. I think it should be general for everybody. So call can come out with the email and then email blast, because the emails are all there.
Thank
to
you.
everybody.
We're again back to the deal. We
Okay.
can advertise, but we can't do salesmen.
Mhm.
That's okay.
and again, that would be a great opportunity for Gary, getting that list. I would much
And
rather.
and if I could, if Gary and Cal can work with us also on that, just to make sure. So, and recognize we want this process to keep moving along.
And I think my point is, any opportunities we have to network,
Mm-hmm.
then we should take advantage of it. Email
Sure.
blasts are great, but if you can.
Yeah, but by way of example, I'm on a local government listserv. And routinely I will get an announcement that Orange County, Florida is looking for a deputy county attorney. Or another one, the state of Florida Public Service Commission has an opening for deputy general counsel. It's just information that goes out to all local governmental attorneys around the state of Florida, including county attorneys' offices and others.
So
something like
let's go back. I don't know if we had a formal motion on the floor. I think it was more kind of discussion. So you want would you like to formally make that?
Yeah, I would make the motion that, based upon the information presented here tonight by Cal, that he prepare
What's that?
I'm sorry.
Tony's gonna.
Yeah, he prepare to present to Tony the terms of a consulting agreement. Tony's going to put it in legalese, get it back to you for approval such that it would be available to terminate the existing Premier District Management contract on March 3rd. At the same time,
And be a professional consulting agreement between Premier and the district. Yeah,
yes,
Replace
Would it be
initial-
February,
yeah,
sorry, would it be February 17th?
February
Sorry.
17th.
February 17th, not March 3rd.
February.
I'm sorry, a lot. I fast forward. February 17th.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that it specifically would include the process for the selection of district management personnel and discuss Scott's duties and responsibilities as part of that consulting package.
An additional
And-
manager.
And lastly, appoint Laura as the interim district manager. Those are the three basic components.
And appoint Laura as the assistant district manager, interim district manager.
District manager. So we terminate the existence. We initiate a new special services agreement, which concludes consulting and the retention of Scott. And we appoint Laura as the interim district manager. They're the three main components.
And then he would be available as the consulting manager to field questions that the interim district manager and or the board might have relative to the operation until a district manager is retained.
And I'll second that.
Okay, first and second.
And
Any
that's
additional-
in the role of a
Lots of luck in that.
advising and not directing.
That's
That
correct.
is correct.
Correct.
So any additional discussion?
Oh my God, I hope not.
All in favor? Good luck transcribing that.
Tell us how you really feel, Bob.
Um,
Bob wrapped up nice succinctly. So kudos to Bob.
Okay, anything else? Nope.
No,
Okay,
just send us the information on,
Oh, yeah,
on
there
the
was stuff
share
with it.
folder. And then I definitely think the sooner we can reach out,
Well, you already have the shared
Yes.
folder. I'm just restructuring it.
yeah.
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you
better.
keep hiding them.
On the meeting at
I'll
the
send out the link again.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the vote was taken on that. I heard the motion in a second.
pass unanimous.
on the meeting
Okay.
on the 15th, I would want to make sure that we have a discussion again of the building out here. I'm just sitting here looking at this. We're not going anywhere. We're not going away. Let's get that building going. We can
Question-
take and borrow the money, do 10-year financing on that building. We're looking at maybe $65,000 a year. You're going to spend $40,000 or $50,000 paying rent. Why would we ever do that? Just go build the building. Maybe make it 2,000 square feet. expand it up to 30.
you don't want to buy.
Well,
I-
I don't want equipment sitting out there in the yard.
I have a comment. When we had our meeting with Lee County and we were talking about some various things, that pad that's in the back by the VFD trailer back there where the tank used to be that we took out, they did give us permission to put something on that pad. Granted, it's not probably a 2,000 square foot building, but Kenny and I were talking about that. And it may be something where we can put, he said that as long, we could build like some kind of a
Like
shed
a
or
metal
something.
shed.
back there.
Where's the
The
pad?
pad, it's inside that next gate in the back by the trailer back there where the big tank used to be that we took out. So there's already a concrete pad there. It's by the pumps, I think back there. Yeah, there's a
Is it next to
pad.
the irrigation pumps?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know where you're.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to take
That's not,
I want to
Very
take
big.
Ed's comment maybe a
He said
step
it'd be big enough to
further.
get the stuff that we'd never really use out
so
of
you would
the,
put in a temporary structure, bolt it down to the concrete pad and be done with it?
yep. And he would just move the things out of back there that he doesn't really ever use. We would just put that all back there and it would free up a ton of
What
space over in
what
the.
permitting do we have to go through to get with that? Who's going to hassle us?
That's what I would need to check in. I
Okay.
could work with Scott.
So I do want to say that, we have a habit of looking for Band-Aid solutions. And I think a lot of times because they're the most cost effective, but at some point we're going to have to address our much larger concern, which is this building, administrative operations and other things. And everything we do is not cheap.
Well,
But I'd hate to
Well-
build something and then we
Well,
still need space
I
here.
I
And
totally agree, but we just went out in the marketplace with a $7.5 million.
yeah, I mean, now's not the time.
Right.
I mean,
okay.
it's a terrible time to build. But what I'm saying is I don't want to put something up for maybe that'll cover 2 years when we need to.
I agree with that.
Well,
too.
That's
Just
why
take a
I would
long
do
view.
it, I'd make it expandable.
Yeah, and I still think
Definitely.
we should still pursue and push for other alternative spaces within Gateway if available.
I've been trolling.
But we
Been
really
subjective on
haven't
that.
seen the
It's-
impact on the residents' tax bill next year for the things we've done
Yeah,
this
no, I
last
agree.
year. Fearful of that.
I'm saying, I'd much rather.
And I'm not
do
up for
something
election,
larger.
so I'm okay.
Yeah, I'd much rather see something larger that's gonna have more impact down the road than just keep spending money.
I agree with
spending
that.
money. So, okay, I will call the meeting adjourned at 4:55. Thank
Now,
you
do
all.
you have something?
I just had one question. In this contract that Tony and I are putting together, I would assume that we report to you as a board, and I
Oh,
would
yes.
keep board communications through you.
Yes.
guys.
Only.
Yeah. Now, yes, you get your direction from the board. However, there will be interaction with Laura and staff for various needs. But your direction will come from the board. Good. Thank you. Thanks, Cal, for coming in. I appreciate it. Hope you have a good vacation.